What's going on, guys? Reason for this podcast here is we just rolled out another update to our 2025 Illinois rankings. And after a long spring where our whole staff was out in full force, getting looks at players that we saw in the winter and, you know, seeing who was performing this spring, along with looking at some stat lines across the state. And there were some names that needed to be moved around in our list. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, is taking a look at some of the top 10 guys, some guys moving up the list, some newcomers, some risers, basically any names that warrant some attention, guys that are doing it on the field. So at number one, brand new number one in the 2025 class, Cameron Appenzeller, left-handed pitcher out of Glenwood. High school that is known to, long produce arms. It's a factory down there. Just one of those central Illinois, southern Illinois towns that just keeps pumping them out. And Cameron Appenzeller is next in line. He's how you would draw up a left-hander. It's long, loose, it's easy, it's projectable, it's with strikes, it's up to 90, 91. Big-time slider that just keeps getting better. I know, Diego, if you want to touch on anything with Cameron here, like you just saw him, and from what I saw in his first outing of the year to what you saw this most recent outing, I mean, it seems like he just keeps getting better at an extremely quick clip.
Yeah, ultra easy. It's about the easiest upper 80s to low 90s you'll ever find. Comes out of like that three-quarter coveted window. Quick worker, like knows when he needs to add and subtract. He would go like 2-1 count, 87 for a strike, and then reach back for 90 whenever he needed to. The separator's the breaking ball. Even when he came to the GBA Scout Day in February in the winter, I think it was like 73 to 75 with more of that like 11, or I guess he's left-handed, so 1-7 action, gradual, not a ton of oomph, ton of bite to it. Saw him on last Friday against O'Fallon, 77 to 80, like true sweeper with hard bite and more like lateral tilt to it. He would back foot it to righties. He would front door it to righties. He would throw it for strikes. He would throw it in 3-1 counts. It's a real breaking ball, and I've actually seen him in the past throw a real changeup too. So he didn't have to do it on Friday, but the sky's the limit. Like I've seen a lot of good arms the last couple of years down here, a lot of guys that got paid, a lot of guys that are off having great college careers, and I think Cam's got a chance to be just as good as any of them. So new number one, rightfully deserved, big-time basketball player, big-time golfer too, coming out of a high school, like you said, Drew, with plenty of pedigree behind it.
Yeah, that says a lot if you're comparing him to some of those arms you've seen in the near future, or in the recent past with Blake Walters, Xander Muth, all those guys you've seen. At number two, same guy stays at number two, Jaden Fauske. Multi-sport athlete along with Appenzeller. Appenzeller is also a multi-sport athlete. He plays 3 sports down there at Glenwood. And Fauske's a football player at Nazareth, as well as a standout baseball player. And for my money, he's one of the best left-handed bats in the Midwest. He's athletic enough to play all over the diamond. He catches, he plays third, he can play a corner outfield spot. He also pitched a lot last spring for Nazareth. This year, his damage has been done in the batter's box. Just continues to look like one of the more polished bats I have seen, come out of the high school ranks here in Illinois in a while. Looking at his stat line from this spring, he hit .557, 14 doubles, drove in 43, scored 42 runs. To me, the biggest numbers with him, when the .557, yeah, that stands out, but his strikeout to walk. 23 walks, he struck out 6 times. And he's getting pitched tough. Yes, he does have protection in that lineup there at Naz because he's got a lot of good players around him, but only striking out 6 times with the power that he has. And I just think it speaks to the bat-to-ball skills and just how talented he is. And everybody, knows who Jaden Fauske is and is pitching him as tough as possible. So impressive talent there at number 2. I think he's, poised for a huge summer and could turn some heads. At number 4, Connor Essenberg moves way back up the list, deservedly so. He was one of the top performers all spring long. Two-way prospect, leading the way in pretty much every category for Lincoln Way West. He's a unique profile. He's a left-handed thrower, right-handed hitter, and it's been very firm on the mound with just a lot of dynamic stuff, I guess I would say. The breaking ball has been above average, can show a changeup, attacks with the fastball, highly competitive, up to 93, and then gets in the box, and it is just as imposing. For me, he gets off his ace swing as much as anybody else in the state. Like, he is ready to go from the time he gets in there, and he's letting it eat. But he's letting it eat with an approach. We've talked about him in the past, gap to gap with power, not a ton of swing and miss. He can see spin. And then when I saw him play, he was playing right field, and it was an extremely windy day that day. He was handling fly balls with ease. And you saw pretty much every other outfielder, any other, position player that was having to handle pop-ups on that day was making it look a heck of a lot harder than he was making it look. So he's moving way up the list and could continue to move up the list, to be honest with you, just with how he performs this summer, because he's another guy that should interest a lot of pro guys with the tool set he has and with the performance that he's shown. Another guy moving up the list, Austin Musso, right-handed pitcher, Mascuda. Not jumping up too much. He was already way up on our list. He was in the top 10. He's moving up one spot to number 9. Diego, you're the one that's had a bunch of looks at him. I know you've got a ton of history and track record with him. So go ahead, if anything you want to mention.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on him plenty, touched on that Mascuda squad plenty throughout on our IHSA podcast. But strike thrower, 6'2", 180, Kansas commit, was a future gamer last year. Fills up the strike zone with 4 pitches. Like, he'll be upper 80s to low 90s, so I'm up to 93 in his first outing right out the gates. He'll pitch anywhere from 88 to 91. Backspins the fastball up in the strike zone. Tight little slider in the upper 70s. He'll throw kind of one of those bigger, loopy, Zach Greinke type breaking balls, has kind of a get-me-over, and he'll pull the string on a changeup to left-handed hitters too. So it's a starter profile with a starter body. The velocity is sustaining upper 80s to low 90s now. If he continues to tick up in that department and is kind of pitching next year in the low 90s, I would expect him to draw some pro interest as the spring goes on. But one of the best guys in the state in terms of get you a win, give me the ball. I'm going to throw 6-7 innings, not walk dudes, fill up the strike zone, and have guys beat him if need be. He's really good. So
the polish and present pitchability reminds me a lot of Dominic Vegley. Throws a ton of strikes, yeah. And I know they're not the same profile, but just the strikes, the performance, the fact that they can spin it. There's just a lot to like, I think, is really the point there.
I think the compete factor and the mound presence too. Like, I've seen him pitch a good amount now, and he's pitching some big games, like some big Mississippi Valley Conference games, some big playoff games. Like, there's no rattle. It doesn't matter, like, if the other team's dugout is yelling at him, if the fans are yelling something, if there's bases loaded and nobody out, like it's the same guy. It's the same even keel demeanor. It's the kind of demeanor that you could step onto a college campus as a freshman and throw 50 innings and have success because there's no rattle. He's not going to be up. He's going to be unfazed with anything. So polished arm down here, one of many.
And it makes a lot of sense you would say that, as you were watching Dominic Vegley here, and he's a Big 12 freshman of the year, correct? Is that correct? Or freshman pitcher of the year?
That is correct.
Okay.
Freshman of the year.
Okay. That's quite the statement there. So good stuff from Dominic. And just looking outside the top 10 here, 2 arms that are moving up the list. Tyler Deffelball saw both of them this spring. We've got Luke Menzik first for Lincoln Way Central. He's a Xavier commit, and I don't want to steal any of Tyler's thunder here. But then you also have Aiden Flynn, a lefty from Marist, who's jumping way up the list. But Tyler, go ahead. I know we've spoke on these guys in the past, but what makes you like them and move up the list?
Yeah, no, we've talked a lot about Luke Menzik, it feels like, the last few weeks, but deservedly so. First saw him 2 months ago, beginning of the year, and it was good, right? It was good. Saw it a few weeks ago and was just so blown away. I think what stands out the most with him is just the compete factor, like Diego was talking about with Austin Musso. Like, He's a guy that'll come right at you with his best stuff in the zone. It was up to 91 just a couple weeks ago. His breaking ball has been really good the two times I've seen it. And he can add and subtract on it. He can, play it more vertically to get it over for strikes, and then he can also make a dart laterally when he needs a swing and miss. So just really impressed with him. He's moving up and deservedly so. I would imagine he's got the ball tomorrow in a big game against Lincoln Way East. So we'll see how that goes for him. And then moving down, Aiden Flynn, right? It's a 6'6" lefty that moves well down the mound, can run it up to 90. He's going to Illinois, so he's making a big jump. And I think what stands out the most with him is just he throws a ton of strikes, which is awesome. That's rare for a guy with that long of levers to be able to sync up his body repeatedly and get his pitches in the zone. And then on top of that, his breaking ball is really good. And he can locate it to both sides of the dish for strikes. So both of those guys have just been awesome all spring. And they're reaping the benefits of it now.
Yeah, Aiden Flynn, I mean, he's a guy that I could see continuing to move up the list. I know he made a huge jump. He's at number 20, but left-handed arm talent is such a high commodity. It's such a highly sought-after piece for pro baseball, college baseball. Those guys get paid. Those guys get big offers. So, he's got a lot of things going for him. And I think you touched on maybe the most important piece is the fact that he's 6'6". He's this age still. He's young. And he's able to control his levers and throw strikes, and it's pretty dynamic stuff. So, moving on, Lucas Krebs and Braden Zillis come in at number 25 and number 26. Both just very interesting position players that play up the middle of the field right now. I know Braden Zillis kind of does a little two-way action, left-handed hitter, but Diego, you've gotten your eyes on Lucas Krebs a bunch, seen Edwardsville a bunch, and I know he's had a good year down there.
Yeah, recent Illinois commit. Starts at shortstop for them, hits in the 3-hole, 2-hole, middle of that lineup. Good-looking kid, good body. Older brother played at Lindenwood. He's got bat speed. He's got bat strength. He can handle. He's shown me this spring he can handle velocity. But honestly, like the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway for me has been the defense. Kind of going into the year, it was more of, is he going to stick at short? Is he going to play third base? Last year, he'd play a little bit of left field for them just because they had an older group around the infield. But the arm strength, the hands, the footwork, the ability to play off platform, the ability to play on the move, like yesterday on Wednesday, seeing them against Collinsville on a natural surface because Edwardsville plays on dirt. He goes into the 6.5 hole, back picks a ball kind of deep, fires an absolute strike across the infield to get a left-handed runner out. It's a real arm. Like I think he'll have no problem sticking on the infield at the next level, whether it's at short or at third base. Has definitely been one of the biggest winners this spring down here for the Tigers.
The other name that we mentioned was Braden Zillis and Hammett. I know you've gotten a look at Manuka.
Zillis popped in the winter for me. Took one of my favorite rounds of BP at the preseason All-State, and then saw him pretty early in the year against JCA. And I just love the swing. There's a ton of upside in it. Super loose. He's got really good control of the barrel. I mean, it seems like there's got to be a wear spot on that kid's barrel, like how often he's hitting the ball hard. But it translates into game. Like he just hits, and when you perform, it's hard to ignore it. Like obviously he's got the tools and he looks the part, but if you don't perform, then it kind of is what it is. But he really is performing. He's one of their best players on both sides of the ball. I mean, he can play a real shortstop, natural defender. He moves comfortably to both sides of his glove, soft hands. He's got range. I've seen him make a good play over his shoulder into left field. Just not a very easy or natural play to make, and he made it look pretty easy right after he came off the mound from pitching. So it was his first inning there, like had no, probably wasn't comfortable yet and still is making plays like that. Just a premier athlete. And then on the mound, I mean, he gets up to 89. He can spin a really good slider. Just the way that kid moves, like he's super athletic, super flexible, gets really good layback in his arm, and it just kind of shoots out. Like the ball just fires from his hand. There's a lot of upside on both sides of the ball for him. I really don't know what I like him more as. Probably I probably like the bat a little more right now, but I mean, I would not be surprised to see that arm continue to tick up. And I mean, he could be a real two-way at the next level.
Oh, and that's a nice luxury to have, is to not have to make a decision yet and just let it play out. Who knows? Maybe the arm talent will turn into something so good where he's 94 with a plus slider, and it's like, all right, like that's, going to play at such a high level, or maybe he'll just continue to rake and he can just put the arm on the back burner. But really happy for him. And it's always good to see when a guy is a good baseball player and maybe just lacks the big high-end tools, and then all of a sudden it starts to come and he's already been a good baseball player and now the tools are there. And that's really how guys propel up the board and help their prospect status in general. Because you got to have tools. Like, to be at the top of the class, you have to have big tools. You have to have something plus about your game. And then you got to also be able to play. So really, really good to see that out of Zillis. And another guy that's kind of always been a performer for us, continues to get better, and had a really, really good spring for Maris was John McAuliffe. Had long been a catcher, and I know he's made a bit of a transition to center field, and I think that's probably more of his natural spot. He's a left-handed hitter that's an above-average runner, and he's on the barrel a lot. And it's a flat swing with high-end bat-to-ball skills, and he was really, really dynamic for Maris this year. So John McAuliffe, still uncommitted, by the way, and he is up to number 30. So good to see out of John. And Gavin, we've got a Central Illinois arm making a huge jump up over 100 spots. Fill us in. What do you got?
Monticello kid. He pitches alongside Luke Teschke. I've seen him up to 90 miles an hour this spring. He moves well. He's got a really quick arm, and he gets better every time we see him. Hammett saw him in the fall, and I think he was a low, mid-80s guy. Now he's up to 90, and we've heard reports that maybe it's a little bit higher since I've last seen him. So,
which I think we all weren't surprised by that, because the trend that he's been on, and this is Ike Young for everybody out there. I think I might have cut Gavin off when he was saying it. So Ike Young, Monticello. But not surprising, because he has been climbing as much as anybody else in the class, and every time we see him, it continues to elevate. And we all watched the video from that day you saw him, and we all love the arm action. So there's a lot to come with him. But anything else on Ike?
Something that's interesting too is, we don't know what kind of coaching he's gotten yet. He lists himself as a shortstop, so this could be something kind of newer for him, which is really intriguing as well. And just the build's athletic. He's got a lot more room to grow. So really good one there in Ike Young, and I'm excited to see where he kind of goes over the next year and a half.
Yeah, that's an uncommitted arm, and it's another Central Illinois quality arm coming out of the woodworks here. So college coaches should be on him all summer long. Another name we wanted to mention, coming in at number 48, is Kalen Scheider, Hampshire High School. Kind of like Zillis. We were talking about Braden Zillis from Manuka. Scheider's a two-way guy and did it on both sides of the ball this year for Hampshire. It is a really, really athletic arm. I would say that's kind of the one thing he can really hang his hat on right now. I like the swing. I like him behind the plate, but the arm just looks really special. The way it works on the mound this winter, it was coming out easy, up to 90. And then behind the plate, it comes out really, really good, really athletic, good mover. And he really performed this year for Hampshire. Another uncommitted prospect climbing up our board that I think is somewhat of a sleeper in this class, in my opinion.
Yeah, Drew, and you touched on the commodity that is left-handed pitching.
Yes.
And one of the bigger risers, too, up 33 spots, is Mason Orton from Muhammad Seymour. Left-handed arm, good body, long, lean, lanky. Threw a lot of quality innings for them last year as kind of that number 2 role behind Blake Walters, who obviously got drafted to the Kansas City Royals. But he's been really good this spring. He's kind of stepped into that number 1 role for the Bulldogs. We've seen him up to 88. I got to look at him at the Kickoff Classic really early on in the year. It's a strike thrower. He fills it up. The secondaries, breaking ball, change up, slightly average, but in the strike zone often. Like, he'll throw any pitch in any count to you. It's a repeatable delivery. And I've actually heard from multiple people now that he's kind of bumping into that creeping up to that 90s, that low 90s range. So left-handed arm that fills up the strike zone with a good body and a clean arm. Like, that guy's going to tick up eventually. And he's been one of the better arms in that Central Illinois pocket this spring.
And I was just going to say, yet another Central Illinois arm to keep an eye on. Uncommitted as well. So yet another arm that's uncommitted, up 20 spots to number 71 is Charlie Tazzy at Cary Grove. And I think we collectively as a staff all have the same opinion on Charlie. He can really, really pitch. If you want a guy to go win you a game and compete, you're probably going to hand the ball to Charlie amongst a handful of other guys in the state. He'd be right there with them. The velo, nothing crazy. He's 86.5 this winter. Just looked up his profile, made sure I had the stats on lock here. He was 86.5, topping with the fastball. But to me, it's the whole repertoire. Every pitch has all kinds of action going different directions in the zone. Throws a sinker as well. He kind of knows who he is, tries to pitch at the bottom of the zone. The slider's a high spinning, 2,500 RPM on the slider, quality pitch. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on Charlie, but he's a polished arm that gets after it that college coaches should know about.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a true sinker baller. So I don't think the 86, you really shouldn't take too much stock into that, because if that kid, kind of reminds me in a way of like a Cole Van Assen. Like, that kid, he just had a great year at Purdue. And I mean, I don't know what he was throwing, but he was like maybe topping out at 90 his senior year, right? If Charlie can get up in that 88, 90 range, like, that's going to get you a lot of outs, and it could get you outs in Power 5. Like, it just kind of reminds me of like back in the day growing up watching UCLA or those California schools. Everybody was a sinker baller throwing like 88 or like topping out at 90. And I mean, it gets outs. Like, he's missing barrels, and I think he's going to continue to throw harder. I think that kid's got a really bright future.
I like the Van Assen comp. And to your point, I was talking to Coach Marks over there at Purdue, and I think Van Assen is still kind of pitching at that 88 to 90 even this spring, and had a really, really low ERA, and I know he was a valuable arm for Purdue. And just taking a look at our list here, next name that I wanted to mention, he's at number 73, and I could see him just continuing to climb. Nolan Majewski out of Tinley Park High School. I know I butchered that name probably. I apologize, Nolan. But he popped on our radar as a youngster going into his sophomore year at our first ever state games. I saw him dive down the left field line and make a really, really good play in the outfield next to the fence. And then saw him just constantly barreling up baseballs. He's not overly physical. It is that top of the order, 9-hole type guy at the next level, just depending on how high of a level he plays at. But it's a high bat to ball. It's a level flat swing. It's a line drive approach. He can backspin the baseball. He hits it to all fields, and he's highly athletic. I believe he had a huge winter basketball season for Tinley Park as well. Don't quote me on how many points he scored, but I saw his name a lot just coming across social media. He's a guy that I would bet on as far as just being a performer, playing the game, and just being a ball player. So I really like Nolan. Right behind him, Tyler, is an arm that you're pretty familiar with over at Nazareth.
Yeah, Mac McGarry. He was actually just named our Player of the Week this week for what he did last week. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I know over 2 separate appearances last week he was dominant. But I saw Mac. It was a little over a month ago now. It was against number 2 team in the state at that time, Joliet Catholic. He came in relief, and over his 2 innings was awesome. I thought it was 86 to 87. He touched 88 a couple times. His fastball kind of plays with some sink. And I also really liked his slider. It was tight. It flashed wipeout capabilities at times. So he's kind of a guy that, to me, is probably a Swiss Army knife for that Naz pitching staff. He can relieve, do some long relief, close. I think he starts for him every now and then too. So, but I've really liked what we've seen from Mac McGarry.
I'm going to put you on the spot right here because I think Mac is he's an arm that college coaches need to be all over. And you saw another arm this spring that college coaches should be all over. And he's not rising a ton because he was already up pretty high. He was at 35. Now he's at 33. It's Brandon Shannon out of McHenry. So uncommitted arm, all kinds of upside. You've talked about him on this podcast in the past, so you don't need to really get into it, but I wanted to mention his name because we're throwing out all these guys that I think should be highly sought after, and he's right there towards the top.
No, absolutely. With Brandon, like it's a really quick arm. The arm really works. And when I saw Brandon, like he starts for McHenry, so it was a little bit longer of a look than I got on Mac. But with Brandon, I think the compete factor is there, which is what you want. And he was showing a splitter when I saw him that got better and better as the game went on, and had some real tumble to it. In high school, that's a really tough pitch, I think, for high school hitters to lock in on and try and get a hold of. And but no, that's a good call out there. Brandon is moving up our ranks more and more. It feels like every time we go through these rankings, and deservedly so.
And not many high school guys are seeing splitters. There's not many arms that are throwing really quality splitters at this point in their career. That's interesting. Another arm, Central Illinois. Gavin Smith, take us away.
Yeah. So Schaffnet, I mean,
Ryan Schaffnet,
Ryan Schaffnet, uncommitted 2025. He's from Morton, right there in that Peoria kind of area. And the frame is real. He's 6'6", 215, and I saw him last spring, and he is significantly stronger. The body looks a lot better. He was mid-80s with his fastball when I saw him earlier in the spring, and he threw his changeup for strikes, and I like it has a lot of fade and heavy fade, a lot of movement to it. And he has confidence in that changeup and breaking ball of his. But I think the thing that impresses me the most about him, he throws strikes. And I want to say, Drew, there was a line that you sent me where he threw a 7-inning complete game, and it was 75% strikes. I don't remember the exact number of strikes to amount of pitches, but that's ridiculous. Throwing 75% strikes in a complete game.
I agree, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm ticked that I don't have it in front of me because it was one of the more impressive just strike to ball ratios that I've seen while doing this. Like it jumped off the page that he is a true just strike thrower, just strike pumper. And there's not that many guys that are just in the zone with that kind of frequency. So no, that stood out as well, Gavin, to me, and I know that's why I shot it over because I hadn't seen a stat line like that in a while.
Yeah, it's just, and I mean, just the frame. To me, I think he's going to be a guy. Things are going to start to slowly tick up velo-wise for him, and he's going to find a good place for himself. And I think a lot of college coaches will be happy with having a guy like Schaffner on the mound because to me, he just seems like a winner. Morton really relies on him a lot. I know I saw the other day he came in relief, and he's a starter, but, I mean, you need a guy like that to throw strikes and get you outs. To me, Schaffner seems like that guy.
Yeah, and he had a disjointed 2023 where I think he was just battling some health stuff and didn't throw a ton, and we weren't really sure what we were going to see out of him this year. So to see what he's doing now, I mean, couldn't be happier for him and his future. And another arm coming out of Central Illinois. And Diego, I know we're going to touch on a Southern Illinois arm here that was super intriguing in the winter. I got a brief look at him early in the spring, but I know you got a more recent look at him.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we as a group always talk about, and like the scouting community in general, is you're always looking for outliers, right? Like, if you scroll down our list of rankings, the further down you go, you're going to find a lot of right-handed pitchers, a lot of guys that play third, that play first, that play the outfield. Like, we put a premium on outliers, and when you're 6'3", 210 pounds, left-handed, and could put on 20 pounds like Dax Dunnell at Edwardsville can, like, that's going to stand out. The very first guy I usually see when I walk up to Edwardsville High School to watch them play is Dax Dunnell. Like, he sticks out immediately. Saw him out of the pen against Highland a couple weeks ago. 1 inning look. I mean, just cruising in the upper 80s, touched 90 a few times. It comes out real good. It's kind of deceptive. He gets kind of that high front shoulder and pitches from that 3/4 slot, so it's tougher angle. Did not see a breaking ball. Saw it in the winter. Like, it is all the ingredients of a guy that could be a true dynamic arm, especially with that body. He just needs to really put it together. But if it clicks, like, it's dynamic impact type stuff for the big left-hander. Still uncommitted too.
It's a really impressive video. It looks right. So really hoping
it's in sync. Yeah. Like, it's in sync, and man, like, he gets that real high angle, and it boom comes out, and it jumps on you, and I can't imagine, especially for lefties, but even for righties, that it's a comfortable at bat by any means. So
well, and it's funny you say uncomfortable at bat, because I think the next guy here that we want to talk about, we're going to get into a group of prospects that are newcomers to the rankings. Guys that maybe we didn't see before, maybe they popped on the radar this winter, but we needed to see them in game before we really had the confidence level to put them into our list. But Younes Hamadeh at Stevenson has uncomfortable written, all over it to me as a hitter. And Peter, I know you've got some thoughts on Younes.
Yeah, well, the head coach over at Stevenson kind of warned us about him, right? They're like, "Hey, we got this big right-hander that we think is going to be good for us." And I mean, he was exactly right. He was on my mound at the McHenry showcase. Really impressive. I mean, he was up to 86, and he had one of the highest spinning fastballs that we saw all winter. I think it was spinning around 2,500 on average, that's really impressive, especially for a high schooler. But he's 6'6", 6'7", every bit of it. Gets really good extension down the mound. I mean, the ball's on you quick. But the thing that, we were watching him in the showcase, we're like, okay, he's 6'7", there's some intent here. How is he going to play in game? Like, is he going to throw enough strikes? Just that whole aspect of it. And he absolutely did. So he pitched to a 1.6 ERA this year. He was one of their best arms. I mean, to be able to repeat like that and throw enough strikes at that size with the way that fastball comes out, I mean, there's just a lot to like there. And I think it's going to continue to tick up as he keeps developing physically. But yeah, no, big fan of Younes. Really happy for that kid. Glad he had a great year.
Yeah, and I think, you couldn't have said it better. Just with the moving parts he has and the uniqueness to the delivery, I think it didn't cause any concern, but it was just like, we need to see this, and we need to see how real it is, and it looks really real. And if you watch the way that his arm works and just how loose of a mover he is, like, there's a lot more to come in there.
He's super flexible for that size.
Exactly.
Like, it's impressive.
Yeah, so that's a really good arm there for Stevenson and Coach Scala. And then coming in at number 91 is Sean Cody, Richards High School. I had long been told from Coach Sefcik at Marist, I don't know if I'm throwing him under the bus here or not, but they play Richards every year, and he's long told me about Sean. But I had not been able to see him. He came to an event this winter, showed really well. Showed some tools that can, stick at the D1 level at least. It was the tools that he showed at the showcase. Went on to have a good spring and just committed to UIC. But he comes in at number 91. Good baseball player over there at Richards. A guy that could continue to move up the list here. Right behind him, same exact kind of situation, Gavin. Like, we had seen Gavin Bailey from Muhammad Seymour in a video, heard his name a couple times, finally came to an event this winter. We like the left-handed bat. We're like, man, we need to follow this. Like, I'm not sure where he plays defensively in the outfield. Like, is he a center fielder, left fielder, right fielder? Trying to figure those things out to really solidify, like, what kind of prospect value he has. But it's a left-handed bat, and he went out there this spring and proved that it's a real left-handed bat.
Yeah, totally. And I think Diego said it best on this past week's IHSA podcast. There's not many times you go on Twitter and don't see a Gavin Bailey home run is kind of how it felt. I mean, felt like weekly he was hitting 1-2 home runs. So good spring for Gavin. And I mean, I think he's one for sure that coaches are going to want to get a look at. And because he's a talented, athletic kid, and he's got that sweet left-handed swing.
Well, and I'm pretty sure like this was his first year full-time starting at Muhammad. So for him to do this kind of in his first year as a junior, I think it leads me to believe like he's only going to go up from here. So he comes in at number 118, and right behind him at number 119 is a guy that I know you've liked this spring.
Yeah, Kyle Beatty. From Normal Community is an uncommitted 2025 again, like a lot of these guys. I think there's a lot of things that I like about Beatty. I guess number one being he's a starting quarterback at Community. He was an all-conference quarterback at Community, and they were a really talented football program. So he's just an athlete. And then secondly, I really like the actions up the middle. Every time I see him in IO or in game, the way he moves, it's so clean. It's so easy. He's got a clean transfer, a good arm across the diamond. It's accurate throws. I don't think I've seen him make an error this spring. He just he makes the right play, does it right up the middle. And he looks like a guy that can play up the middle in college. And then at the plate, go ahead, Drew.
I just want to speak on the defensive part that you're talking about because I think you are so spot on with he's not a overly highly actiony guy. It's not about the flair. Like he's very fundamentally sound, no wasted movements, and plays the game and gets the job done. Obviously, like it's every routine play. Like you can just go ahead and mark it down in your book is kind of what it seems like. Oh, ground ball to short. All right, 6'3". So just steady Eddie with some talent. But yeah, go ahead offensively. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just love that.
No,
point.
You're good. He's a right-handed hitter, and he doesn't miss the barrel a lot. I mean, it's consistent contact, accurate barrel. It's a simple approach. There's not really much to it. Simple load, and he just makes contact. And I mean, I've seen singles, doubles, nothing crazy, but he gets on base, and he's a leadoff hitter for a really talented Normal Community team. So Kyle Beatty, uncommitted 2025, a guy I really like, and I'm going to keep tabs on moving forward here.
And I mean, let's be honest. Like he comes in at number 119. Could he be number 60 in the state? Sure. Like, it's hard where to place these guys. Long story short is we think he's a really good player and coaches should know about him. And whether he's 119, 72, 79, like it doesn't really matter. Anybody that makes these rankings, in my opinion, is a very good player because there are a ton of good players across the state. And there's a lot of guys that don't make this list that we still think are good players. We just have to cut it off at some point. So, really, really good to see that Kyle Beatty has been showing well for you this spring because he was a guy that I had kind of been getting glimpses of but wasn't sure what kind of player he was. And then two more infielders that are coming into the rankings for the first time here are guys that I'll let Peter talk on.
Yeah, we'll start with T.O. Greco. Got a good look at him over at the Chicago Public League Championship at Wrigley. Really like the way that kid plays the game. Strong right-handed swing. He's got some thump. Unfortunately, didn't see him get any hits. He actually walked 3 times in front of me, but still got to take something away from that. He's got good awareness for the strike zone, comfortable at bats. But he's either leading or right near the top of that team in batting average. I think he's right around 500, hitting 500 for the year. So I really like that kid. He can play a good shortstop too. Range up the middle, steady defender. Kind of the same thing as Beatty. It's like when it's hit to him, you feel really confident that he's going to make the play. So he's jumping up a bit, or actually making the rankings for the first time, excuse me. And then Zimi Baftiri from Morris. I got a good look at him a few weeks ago. I mean, that kid, I had heard his name, but I really hadn't seen him. That was my first time seeing him. So, I thought that he was a really interesting right-handed bat. Super simple, gets his foot down early. It's on time, it's flat, and it's strong. He hit a home run to left field, and he was just taking great at-bats all day. I really love the presence in the box, too. And then he's another one. He can really defend up the middle, comfortable on the move. He's got soft hands. I think that's a kid. Both of those guys are guys that coaches should know about moving forward for sure.
One thing there, Gavin, on Zimi and entering the rankings, which always helps, is when we can get multiple looks on guys. So I saw Zemi early on in the spring, and I saw him make a really good play up the middle. I didn't see a ton offensively, just with the way the game worked out, what he saw that day. So I liked it. I wasn't all that sure where he would fit in the rankings. I thought he was a guy we definitely needed to, pay attention to. And then Peter goes and sees him, and he shows even better than when I saw him. And it's like, all right, like now we feel really good confidence-wise that this is a guy. He needs to be in the rankings. So getting multiple looks on guys certainly helps. It's hard. Like we see such a vast variety of players, and we get such a variety of looks. Some guys it may be half a game, some guy it may be one inning out of the bullpen, and some guys we maybe have 50 at bats on. So that to me is one of the biggest challenges here of doing the rankings is the confidence level that we have on players, depending on the amount of looks that we've had on them and the amount of history that we've had on them. So sorry to get in there, Gavin, because I know there's another interesting player coming out of Central Illinois that you want to touch on that really intrigued me in the video that I saw.
Yeah, Micah McCoy from Washington. He's obviously a 2025 uncommitted, but his brother Mason, also from Washington, he just got called up to the big leagues, made his debut last year for the Toronto Blue Jays, and now he's in AAA for the San Diego Padres. McCoy's his frame is unreal for a high school kid. There are not many high school kids that have that build, the strong. Honestly, he kind of reminds me of James Love, the build from Joliet West. Similar build, they're really strong kids. Right-handed hitters play third base. Very, very similar, in my opinion. But so the pro bloodlines for Micah, impressive. The frame, impressive. And then defensively, I've seen him, make good plays at third base and at the plate. I mean, he looks like he's going to be a strong hitter, a guy that's going to produce a lot of power. I think a little bit of swing and miss sometimes that I've seen, but I mean, he cleans that up a little bit. I think he's going to be a really dangerous hitter for Washington.
And I think he's another perfect example of a guy that we know he needs to be in the rankings, but we don't have a ton of history on him. This was our first time seeing him. As far as I know, Gavin, from what you've told me and what I have seen, I had not seen him in the past, but it's like, wow, this is very interesting. Where exactly do you slot a guy like this? It's hard. It is very hard, but he needs to be in there. And whether he's 68th or 71st or 150th, like he's just a guy people need to know about.
Yeah. And there's a college coach that I'm not going to name drop him, but he's close with the McCoy family. And he's telling me that he's a really hard worker. He's made a ton of strides in the past year. And that's just good to hear. You want a guy like that that's going to work hard, going to get in the weight room, get after it. So Michael McCoy, yeah.
Yeah, and Tyler, I think a guy that's somewhat along the same lines. We've liked him in the past. We weren't sure what to do with him, and then you go out and watch Mundelein this year, and go ahead. We got another newcomer coming in.
Yeah, Nick Zaloni checks in at number 158 here on our new rankings rollout. And what really stood out to me with Nick is so he bats leadoff for Mundelein, started at shortstop. Just seems like a really athletic kid, like all around. Was all over the barrel from the right side. Made all the routine plays at shortstop look routine. Really trusts his hands. And then he can also move well around the bases. Made a triple look really easy when I saw him, and there's just also a ton of room to fill that frame.
Yes.
He checks in at like 5'11", probably like $150, right? And there's so much more room to go there. So the arrow's definitely pointing up on Nick.
Love it. Well, good stuff, guys. I appreciate all the insights, and I mean, you guys are really the most valuable assets we have here. Getting out there, going and watching all these guys play in person. We've had a handful of guys out all spring, getting more looks than maybe we've ever gotten on players in game in the spring, and being able to cross-check guys that we see in the winter. Because of course, you could see a lot from a showcase, right? You could see a way a guy moves. You can see the way a swing works, the actions defensively, we can gather all of the tools, all of the athletic testing, the visual edge testing, but then being able to marry all of that with then watching what they do in game to create the full picture on the player is really what it's all about. And there's still more pieces that we would love to gather, more insights on, hey, what's this kid's makeup? What are the bloodlines? Any information that we can get to give us a better idea of a prospect, we want to get. But that's why we make such a big effort to get out to see as many games as possible, as many teams as possible, and not just in Chicago, not just in Southern Illinois, not in Central Illinois, throughout the entire state. Because as you could tell by our call today, there is talent everywhere. I don't know if Illinois has ever been in a better spot with the talent coming through here. You look at the high school drafts that we've had the last couple of years, and there is no signs of it slowing down. I mean, you look at the top of this 2025 class you've got Cameron Appenzeller at the top, who's going to draw all kinds of interest. You've got Jaden Fauske at number 2. You've got Jack Bauer, a left-handed arm that's been up to 95 with minimal effort and a 3,000, RPM slider. You've got Connor Essenberg that's got huge two-way abilities. I mean, I could just keep going down the list. And there's probably guys down in the 20s right now, 30s, that if they go out and they have a huge summer, like they're gonna get interest. So just really great things happening across the state. And I can't, from my position, just thank you guys enough for, allowing us to feel this confident about these players and everything that you see in the spring. So thank you guys. And I know we'll be back on here soon talking about some IHSA playoffs.
We'll see you guys.